Did you ever use community feedback to help you decide which influencers to work with?
No, but I think it's great to do so. But the one thing I did, and I do every time I start a new brand, is I ask the employees and like the founder who they would love to see. So it could be like a personal level, but I think especially when it comes to sort of startup beauty brands who are often, the employees often the consumer, sometimes it really opens up sort of new people who maybe I wouldn't have thought would be relative to the brand, and they could do really, really well. So I think that's always really interesting. But yeah, I'm always the one on Slack being like, hi, thanks for having me. Everyone send me their 1 to 2 influencers they love.
Have you ever wondered why some brands grow exponentially, building legions of passionate fans that live and die by their logos, and some, well, don't? I do, all the time, and that's probably because I'm a massive brand nerd, but I believe there's a secret sauce at the core of every remarkable brand, a formula that sparks the growth of passionate communities of superfans, building a business and a reputation that will last for years to come. My name is Paul Archer, and I'm a specialist in brand advocacy and word of mouth, having consulted for hundreds of brands on a topic.
Hey, it's Verity here, your co-host of the Building Brand Advocacy podcast.
In this podcast, we tap into the greatest marketing minds in the world as they share the exact tactics and strategies used to build the world's greatest brands, dropping actionable insights every brand builder can apply.
We've got some incredible guests coming up, sharing insights and tips that can truly shift the marketing landscape. If you want to be the first to hear, make sure you hit that follow button. The more people following the show, the bigger and better we can make it. So if you're loving what you hear, don't forget to follow and spread the word. Thanks again for listening. It really means a lot. I hope you enjoy this next episode.
It's time to learn and build brand advocacy.
Hi, and welcome to Building Brand Advocacy. Today, I am so pleased to welcome today's guest, Lowri Evans. Lowri has been mentioned a few times by past guests already, so it only seemed right that we invite her in to talk about all the wonderful things around influencer marketing. Lowri, welcome to Building Brand Advocacy.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here.
Do you want to just give our audience a little, there'll be many people out there that know who you are and know what you do. But yeah, do you want to just give everyone a quick intro into, who you are and what you do?
Of course. I won't go back the whole sort of 10 years, but my most recent one, I was influencer and community manager at VIEVE. So the makeup brand founded by Jamie Genevieve. And then before that, I was at Coco Eve, so like quite a big sort of like global brand, freelancing a little bit before that for like Revive Collagen. And then I would say the biggest one, that was like my first proper role. I mean, I interned from like the age of 13 every chance I could. But the first one was sort of like head of marketing at Spectrum Collections as well, where we did lots of fun partnerships. And then, yes, I've kind of pivoted. I used to be a bit of press and influencer, and now I'd say I'm mainly sort of influencer.
Yeah, she's being very modest. Queen of influencer marketing here right now. And you've just gone freelance.
Yes. Yeah, this week.
Exciting
week.
times.
Thank you.
Okay, let's dig in. So I suppose when it comes to the influencer landscape, what do you think, since when you started, when you joined VIEVE, how has the landscape changed? How does it compare now to obviously just leaving?
Yeah. I would say the biggest difference from when I started to when I left was the sort of growth in the influencer database. So before, they didn't have an in-house role. So we work with Blanket PR, who are like an amazing PR agency. And they sort of very much had their sort of core list. Whereas I think my role was to really expand that. So that can even be from sort of customers who are creators, and being able to have that always on person. So if someone came in, a creator came in to buy the product, me being able to be really reactive to that. And that's led to some of our biggest sort of sales drivers in the brand, just because they were sort of a warm lead, I sort of would say. And also working with nano creators as well, and Spark ads. So I'm you'll probably hear me say the word Spark ad all the time. And affiliates as well. So sort of introduced affiliate platforms and all of that sort of thing. So I think that's, a little bit more performance influencer marketing side, and then just growing the sort of database, I would say.
Okay, we'll dig into some of those. But obviously, as you just mentioned, you worked across various brands. What was the different approach with VIEVE in terms of how you've worked with influencers? How did that feel different?
I'd gone from sort of Coco and Eve, who have like huge sort of paid partnership budget, to VIEVE, where we don't actually pay influencers. So that was quite a big sort of challenge, because especially nowadays, like a lot of influencers are like looking for payment sometimes. So it's a little bit harder to build a relationship. But I would say, and I've always said this about VIEVE, it's such a warm brand. And I think the founder, like Jamie, like she's just so amazing. I mean, even how she makes a customer feel, but like at every event. And that really helped us sort of get that like influencer coverage, I would say. But it was just purely down to relationships. So just having that real constant sort of check-in, I think is really important, like thanking people for content when they feature organically. And I know it sounds so minor, but those sort of things I would say are really important when you don't have the sort of big budgets of these other brands that the influencers you want are dealing with. I would say that's the sort of like approach we went with.
Yeah. I mean, you get that feel from the brand straight off, like especially with Jamie. But just going back to like what you said, it's like obviously the non-paid work, like was that quite a manual thing to like build those relationships? I imagine like that was like a daily like kind of finding the right people and then getting them engaged and having those conversations. Like,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, really manual. I think when I came in, there was already sort of a strong kind of database of kind of core influencers, we would say. But it was, yeah, more like I was in the DMs, whereas I think maybe a lot of influencer managers aren't necessarily in the DMs of a brand. But I really feel that was like a sort of great tool for me to have, because I can see, like have those conversations, reply to stories. It doesn't always have to be about the brand and the product, but it's just more about checking in, saying they look great, even if they didn't use our lip line or whatever. And I think that really helps sort of build a relationship. But yeah, from a like time point of view, obviously that's quite time consuming. But I would say effective when you're not paying them and just sort of hoping they'll love the brand. And
yeah.
obviously the products are great as well.
Yeah.
Which helps.
I also think like that's something that a lot of brands like just forget to do. Like it's that human connection piece, isn't it? And you know, it goes so far, but I think like there's still so many brands that just think, I don't have time to do all of that manual thing, but actually it pays off in the long run, which is obviously like what VIEVE have found out.
Yeah, exactly. I think it is like a slow burner, I would say. And it's not like you do this and you can be like, oh, I spoke to 10 people today and we saw this results. But it is one of those things that like the long term sort of you will sort of reap the benefits from, I would say. And also it's just nice because it means that they genuinely love the products and they're a bit more invested than a sort of transactional contract point of view with paid.
Okay, do you think there was like a specific moment where you realized that this whole sort of like influencer role was moving from like brand love to more of like a performance model, I suppose?
Yes, 100%. I would go back to sort of like affiliates again. Something I'm really passionate about. And I think there's so much in the industry to change around that. I think it's very separate at the moment, but I think when I joined VIEVE, I was really keen to onboard a platform called ShopMy. So we did that. And I think we started noticing some great results in traffic. And then that's when the sort of conversation started to change. But even little things like, I think that some brands don't do is if you'll see a spike in sales or a product will go up sort of jump 10 places in the sort of weekly report. Whereas we should be looking at why is that and who's driving that, because sometimes it can really shock you. So I would say, yes, in terms of like affiliates, that was like the biggest where I became, I would say, more of a performance marketer than thinking with my sort of PR brand cap on.
Yeah. Why do you think not enough brands are thinking like that?
I just think maybe like a little bit old school, like not in a disrespectful way, but I think PR is very much like the relationships, the events, like kind of like over the top gifting. Like I remember like years ago, like Christmas presents, they would do like these insane like designer handbags. They're sort of like top influencers. Whereas I think nowadays there are so many more creators.
Yeah.
Also, it's like that nano is just as important to like macro. So I think and also I think it's harder for brands to reach consumers these days. And with affiliates, you can really sort of like pinpoint that data. Whereas before it's not stabbing in the dark, but a little bit more guessing. Whereas you can actually see in a platform like who is driving sales to your brand. And I think every brand wants traffic. So before traffic was a really sort of hard discussion with sort of like influencers and brands, but now I would say with like affiliates, it's a lot easier.
And I suppose, do you think this kind of like answers like obviously now we're in like closed circled loops, aren't we? It's like the DMs, the WhatsApp groups, the Slacks, even like, you know, Reddit's not really closed, but yeah. Do you think that kind of like affiliate piece is like answering kind of like how to track those like private conversations?
Not necessarily like, I would say like how to track the sort of conversations, but I think it should be a really big indicator on your influencer strategy. And I think that's where the sort of merge isn't really happening. So some of the top sales drivers, obviously they have to be on brand, but they kind of should be on brand if they're promoting you from sort of affiliate point of view anyway. But I would say they need to be really feeding that data to the sort of PR team. So when it comes to doing like an overnight stay or on a PR event, you know, do you have people, obviously you want your sort of brand awareness creators in there, the sort of content creators, but do you have those real traffic drivers where when e-coms is we don't really see anything from this event, at least you've sort of covered those sort of 3 pillars, I would
Yeah.
say.
Interesting. And do you think there's like a certain campaign or a moment where you really like it really summed up that this was like more of like a performance piece?
Think, and not so much just at VIEVE, but in the last sort of 2 brands I worked with, the number one channel sort of bringing in new customers was affiliates. And I think that's when then like a lot more eyeballs sort of came onto the platform. And I think we just grew it because when you sort of join, it is quite like a slow burner and you have to do a lot of gifting and sort of try and guess with different people and if they're going to drive. And some people will really shock you. So there was a creator, she's got like 40,000 followers, like her content's great. But when I look at her, if I had sort of like a blind eye and think she's a huge driver, but she drove like thousands of clicks and like hundreds of sales from just a few Instagram stories. Whereas,
Yeah.
you know, I've worked with people in the like sort of 6 million who won't have nowhere near that sort of impact.
And you've obviously you talked about affiliates and traffic, but before you mentioned Spark Ad.
Yes. Yeah.
I just want to kind of dig into that in terms of like, how is that a sign, or like in terms of how does Spark Ads work with the whole influencer marketing piece as a performance model?
So I think like quite a few brands are doing it and doing it really well. But I think before the influencer teams would do the negotiation, they'd get the paid partnership, they sort of look at their metrics, maybe that's like EMV or like cost per view, whatever.
Yeah.
And then the e-com team would, like affiliate team would have their own sort of side. Whereas I think what's really key is being able to like boost that content and driving an ad to it. So that content might be really, really key. And consumers obviously, I think, feel a little bit less sold to if they're being sold from a person rather than the brand's own channels, because when it comes from brand's own channels, it feels probably a little bit more commercial. Whereas when it's a creator on their own channel, talking about the product, I think that drives. And some of our best performing ads were that we Spark added.
Yeah.
Spark added is a thing, but
It's now.
and just having that sort of like call to action button driving to the website. I think that was really, really important. And we did loads of tests and seeing sort of what creators, but some of them like, really outperformed our best ever like sort of brand campaigns.
Yeah, I think like people follow 2 times more creators than they do brands anyway, which shows a lot in terms of like who they're trusting and who they want to see content from anyway.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes complete sense that would be happening.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm really intrigued, and it's like I've noticed the conversation like popping up a little bit more, and I think we should be having it a lot more. Like in your experience, how should performance and brand marketing work together?
So I think firstly working together,
Yeah.
and just really understanding the success from each other. So there's obviously different sort of KPIs, I would say, like, but making sure that's really well known. So if an event, if the goal isn't traffic, sort of sharing that and just really working as a team with influencers. And I think as well the results can really help both. So as an example, we had like loads of TikTok affiliate videos for TikTok Shop where they're talking about the eye wand, where we didn't really see much success. And then Lorna Lux posted like an organic video that she was gifted like months and months before because she just loved it. It was a really amazing piece of content. It drove over 1 million views on TikTok. And then that for the algorithm boosted all the TikTok Shop videos and sold loads of product. And that was like our highest month on TikTok Shop. So I think it's understanding like how they can work together. So you've got the sort of TikTok Shop, if that's what you're doing, videos ready to go, and then having those organic moments. Hopefully they'll happen as well, but they do really complement each other.
Yeah. The Lorna Lux effect, right?
Oh my gosh, insane. Insane. Honestly, she like has such amazing power. Like it was sold out on cold and then we saw like a huge influx of orders on our site as well. But no, she's amazing.
It's so interesting though that like other influencers at that level don't have that same impact.
Yeah, I always, because I worked at Cosmetics before, which was like a sort of beauty box with influencers, and the kind of purpose was that they would sell out those boxes, and the main goal is like they have to sell product, otherwise you're left with an influencer's name and no one else can really sell it for you. So I think I sort of picked up a few things I would sort of notice, and honestly it just comes down to, I've always said it, like talking to camera on your stories. And like Lorna does that all the time, and she's like, you know, she'll go on with no makeup on and be really authentic with her audience. And I think when they build that almost like friend-to-friend relationship with their followers, that's when you get that sort of impact. Whereas you can have someone with millions, they might engage in their posts and comments, but they're not necessarily maybe have that same trust and that same impact.
Yeah. Interesting, isn't it?
No, I love it.
What do you think the dangers are of kind of like putting too much emphasis on the short-term performance piece over sort of like, I suppose like the expense of brand building?
I would say like missing the potential sometimes. So I think with like influencer marketing, it is long term. Like I've done like an event before, and you might not see like a huge hit in terms of results, whatever result that might be, until like months later. But that relationship building at that event was really key. So I think sometimes if you focus so much on the short term results, you do really miss that long term potential, which I think is really key as part of like influencer marketing.
I mean, I was just doing something just before we recorded this, and I was saying like, I think performance works really well when the brand has already kind of got that familiarity and the emotional connection, and the brand side of things is working. And then performance thrives when like they understand what's converting, where, when, and how. And like, I personally do not understand how they've been two silos for so long.
Yeah.
And like, yeah, it just blows my mind when you see it. Like when you explain it, it makes so much sense. Yeah. But they just don't.
It's so different. I think it's because PR was probably set up so differently, and it was mainly press. And let's think about like back to print, whereas you wouldn't see those traffic. Whereas I think now, because it's all digital and that sort of like influence space, obviously digital, and the driving links, I think that's when they need to be working so closely, and you see impact. Whereas I think back in the day, you wouldn't necessarily, they would be completely measured differently.
What do you think performance marketers can learn from brand marketers and vice versa?
Okay, yeah. Going back, I would say sort of those instant results are not a sort of clear indicator. Those like, yeah, short-term results, and it's thinking about long-term like brand building. And then I think sometimes like platforms, like, you know, a community platform, it's really, I think what you can learn is like having that PR hat on and that brand hat on, because yes, you could be driving loads of impressions, but are they the right impressions, and are they, you know, brand damaging and things like that? And I think talking to each other about that is really, really important to make sure that all the efforts that the sort of brand team are doing is not impacted by the performance team.
I always think as well, like that the whole reach and impressions thing doesn't really, it's not really like a relevance thing. And like, I think it sometimes it just shows you the numbers of like who you've actually interrupted rather than who you've actually influenced or engaged. Like, I just think those, like, that it almost feels like old school metrics in a way.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And then I would say brand marketers can learn from performance marketers just the data side. I really think it's so important that you're having weekly catch-ups with the e-com team and understanding who's driving, and they can say we saw a spike here, and you can say, okay, this content went live here, and really piecing that together and just making sure that the sort of PR list, because you can't gift to like 1,000 people for every new launch, that there are some really key sales drivers who are on brand are in that mix.
Yeah. When you've seen them come together, like what do you think was the key thing that really made it work?
Sharing the data, I would say, in like a nutshell, just like sharing it. But I would say I haven't really seen it massively working together quite yet. But I think, yeah, sharing the data and really involving the brand team as part of sort of like the content for some things, because sometimes like ads can go out and it's really misaligned with the sort of like influencer paid partnerships.
Guys, it's not that difficult. Just get in the same room and have a conversation. Okay, let's shift gears a little bit and just talk around sort of like the community piece. So I suppose, first of all, like, how did the influencer work feed into VIEVE's like own community channels, like your email events, like groups, things like that?
From sort of the power of like UGC. So again, really lucky with VIEVE in particular that we got so much like usage on the content, and they were really happy for us to repurpose it and share it on our sort of like marketing channels with like email or even on the site. And then also just on the feed as well. And we have like Muse of the Month, and that could be a customer, it could be a nano creator, sometimes it could be a macro creator. But I think that was really key, because I think what's nice is if you treat your sort of brand page as a sort of home page, when you click on that, it's nice to be able to see other people talking about it as well. And I've always said, I think if someone featured the product with a sort of get ready with me and there's other brands involved, I never think it's hard. Like, I think it's always a good thing to include the other brands as well, because at the end of the day, we don't all use one brand anymore.
You see it so much more now as well. And I think actually it'd be really transparent to us as a consumer if we saw someone and it was like, everything is VIEVE. And actually, like, I read an article from the co-founder of Inky List, Colette, and I like live and breathe everything that she says. And she was going through her beauty routine, and actually she had VIEVE in there. And it was like, okay, this is great. Like, because like, why would she use every single bit of her product? Because her skin isn't tailored to every product
Exactly
in there. So yeah, I think it's,
and then it's
the
like
right way to go.
refreshing then as well. And you think, okay, that's not like, whereas if you see like only every single one is that. Because even with paid partnerships, like even when I was at Spectrum, like years ago, I would always test that. And I'd be like, you can use a couple of other bits from other brands, because I think it's just more authentic than to be like, and then now I'm going in with the same brand. Just, I think consumers are so much more smarter these days on that.
But do you still think there's a lot of brands out there that want to own that kind of like narrative and are scared to have their name against another name?
Yeah, I do think so, because I think it's more like competitors, whereas I just think it's more life.
It's everyday life, isn't it? Like none of us we all have like our sort of like diehard product or something, but we don't have like, not everything can be from one brand.
No, exactly.
Maybe I'm wrong, but maybe I'm right. What do you think are the small but really high impact ways that sort of like influence work can feed into like real community growth?
In terms of sort of like growing like followers or...
Yeah, I suppose a bit
like...
of everything. I suppose like when you think about the influencer activity and what you do with the influencers, like how does that feed into like how you grow your community? Or is it the same thing?
I think it's very blurred a little bit, but as an example, there's a creator, I feel like all my examples are VIEVE at the moment, but as a sort of, there's a girl called Ellie Thompson, and she was a big customer of VIEVE, and she came to our masterclasses and paid for them and came to our roadshow and like loved Jamie and followed Jamie for years. And then she started creating content constantly for us.
Yeah.
And then she ended up being invited on our big PR trip, and we had a big cinema event as well, and she came to that. And I think it's showing that to the community that that's the potential, so that we're not a brand that has that, you know, tight circle where we only work with like 10 influencers and that's, you're never gonna get there. I think it's like having that, I don't know the right word, but like sort of like authenticity almost within that community, if that makes sense. Because I think that then really encourages people. And she did this really gorgeous post about like, you know, photo of her and Jamie from like 5 years before, and then photo of them at the PR trip. And I think that helps grow a community, because it means that they can aspire to be like that, and it is achievable.
Yeah. I think that's really important. Like I had a moan about this on LinkedIn like the other week, because like there's a couple of brands out there that like I actively talk about in public and obviously to my friends, and I wear them, and I'm not buying them all the time because I just like maybe one, I can't afford it. But then, and I'm in their WhatsApp, I'm in their broadcast channels and all that kind of stuff. I would like read their emails. And then all of a sudden you see this like certain group of like influencers, and you kind of like, you've just chosen them because you've just seen them work with X brand that you think, oh, actually, maybe we should get that person in. And it's like, it's so frustrating to see it.
And it kind of, you don't give up the love a little bit, but it does make
dishearten you a little bit.
It does, because you want to be heard. And I think that's why I think like sort of profiling the community and sharing that, and then, you know, sharing the influencer content in the community as well, I think is quite key. Because some of our best performing social posts were like the events that we would do. People like really love to see it. And again, we were like the events that I would do, it'd be like from nano to macro. And I think again, people really like to see that because they'd be like, oh my God, she used to like be a customer and now she's like at the cinema with VIEVE.
Yeah, absolutely.
And sometimes we would even offer it out to sort of community members or like our VIEVE Society members to come to the event as well. And they're sort of like on a bigger scale.
Yeah. It's really nice mix that, I think, as well, because I can imagine that like with VIEVE, like obviously as a beauty brand as well, you'll have like the professional makeup artists within that influencer mix as well, and like your everyday kind of like brand fans, and so they would all come together in one as like one big event.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. I guess I always think as well, like if a brand, like if they have that two-way dialogue and they're listening to their customers and listening to, you know, their network and stuff, and like I think they just want to be seen and heard, and not in like that typical like cliche way of like saying. I think that saying has become a bit like authenticity. Sorry, I know you've just said that.
No. I agree there, 100%.
But I think it's like you have to kind of like reflect the words back at them.
Yeah, and be like, what does that mean?
Yeah. And
100%.
like, because that's how they really feel heard, because they're hearing their own words back to them and they're seeing themselves reflected, and maybe not necessarily them, but like someone who represents them in a way. I don't know if this makes any sense.
No, definitely. And I think like being active and like replying to the comments. And we had this girl, again, she was a customer, like loved the brand. She did a really great piece of content on TikTok for us. And I saw it and I was like, this is like great from a sort of content point of view. And then we sent her some more gifting, and then she did another video, and then we boosted that. And that was a really great spark ad. And then now we gift her quite a lot. And like, I mean, she's just doing content all the time because I think we like invested in her, I would say, and we saw her effort and acknowledged it and sort of showed that return. And I think that's quite key because it can come from anywhere, it can come from a customer, and they can still drive like hundreds of thousands of views on TikTok, especially TikTok, because it's not really reliant on followers. It's just good content.
Yeah, that's so true. And that brings me on to like my next question, because I'm just thinking like we talk a lot about not just influencers, but like customers, like creators, like kind of would like there's a lot of conversation about bring them in as collaborators, not just like, you know, kind of like contributors. But how do you actually get them to be those kind of collaborators? What have you seen as being like a really good way to engage them to want to have that conversation with you and, I don't know, kind of collaborate more?
I would say it comes down to relationship building. I think sharing an interest in their lives outside of being transactional and having those moments and check-ins. That's not just, hi, did you try that product? What do you think? Like, put it on your stories. I've never been a pushy person. And I used to always say that to like every founder or CEO I worked with. I was like, I'm never going to force on to piece of content, because I promise you, if you hold out for that, you'll get like way more return. As soon as you start pushing people and pressure them in, I think you lose relationships, and then they lose the love of the brand as well.
Did you ever use community feedback to help you decide which influencers to work with?
No, but I think it's great to do so. So obviously there's all these sort of surveys that the brands I worked with will do, like customer surveys. And I think that would be a really nice element to ask, who do they take inspiration from, and sort of see, because obviously we're in this influencer bubble a little bit, and see who we think and we follow. But I think it's important to get another perspective. But the one thing I did, and I do every time I start a new brand, is I ask the employees and like the founder who they would love to see. So it could be like a personal level, but I think especially when it comes to sort of startup beauty brands, who are often the employees, often the consumer, sometimes it really opens up sort of new people who maybe I wouldn't have thought would be relative to the brand, and they could do really, really well. So I think that's always really interesting. But yeah, I remember I'm always the one on Slack being like, hi, thanks for having me. Everyone's sending me their 1 to 2 influencers they love.
No, I think it's a great idea. And I don't think it should be just startups. I think look at what's just happened with some really bad campaigns recently. Like, I think, even the big kind of disruptive challenger brands need to kind of just hone in a little bit and just
ask their like employees who are all probably their consumer as well, and love the brand and probably feel the brand more than anyone. So I think getting that perspective, because like the person on MPD formulating, I would love to know who she buys products from and who she would like die to see a product that she made on.
I mean, we talk a lot like building brand advocacy, that like your employees are like your frontline advocates.
So much now about like UGC, then EGC has become like so big.
Yeah. And I think if you get it right, like they're literally like living, breathing, walking, talking, like brand people out there for
100%.
you. So it's nice to see that brands are kind of like starting to integrate them a little bit more into like the whole kind of like content ecosystem. But yeah, we need to see more of it for sure.
100%.
Okay, I want to like have a little bit of a talk on like trends and sort of like tactical advice. Which platforms or features are you watching closely for influencer or even like advocacy potential right now?
Going back to my favorite affiliates, Shopmy, I would say it's a lot bigger in the US. They've got quite a lot in the UK, but I think that it's just an amazing piece of tech, really. And then I've used sort of like Lefty before just for like tracking impressions, but I would love something as well to track views, because I think impressions are great, but also it's nice to see who's actually watching the content, and not every single platform does that. But yeah, those are the two.
Okay.
I would say.
This might be a stupid question based on everything that you've talked about, but I'm just going to do it anyway. Do you see affiliate programs and creator shops like TikTok shop as helping or hurting authenticity?
TikTok shop, it's a really tricky one. It's worked really well for some brands I've done, and like from a revenue point of view, it's been huge. And I feel like there's like 3 things you need to do to be successful in terms of like revenue on TikTok. It's like working with star creators, going live consistently, and like mass gifting to these affiliates. But what I will say for that is if you have quite a strict sort of brand identity and quite like have harsher boundaries around the brand, I would say, yes, it can be a little bit damaging, just because sometimes, especially with TikTok shop, the people who sell could be might not be relevant for the brand, and might sometimes it's not controlled. But yeah, that's what I'd say.
Did you find like with TikTok shop, like the like discount becomes a bit of a barrier for brands? Like they feel like they have to go in and like heavily discount, which goes against potentially like who they are as a brand.
Yeah, I think so. I think the brands that you see like great success on, they are heavily discounted, which is great for that sort of quick win, and if that you can retain that customer. But I think otherwise it can be brand damaging, because if I'm seeing something and it's generating a lot of views, and I'm seeing that from a brand awareness point of view, that you're selling this product for like half the price, then it's really going to make a hard sell to sell that to me for full price. So I think, yeah, it's difficult when you can't sort of keep up with competitors on TikTok shop, where it is like a hefty discount, like flash sale.
Yeah. And we've seen like nano and sort of like micro influencers become such an integral part of like the whole kind of like influencer. I hate the word funnel. It's not a funnel, is it? It's a network.
Yeah. That means to reword the whole influencer system these days.
We can do that. Yeah. Let's do that. Where do you think they fit into like the whole next phase of like kind of like advocacy, or like, I'm going to say again, the influencer network?
But I would say like so key. For me, like they're such an important category. I tend to just on that as well, and this is not answering your question, but I've sort of come away from like influencer strategy doing on following. Obviously, I have talked about like nano and micro, but for me, it's more about what that person does. So are they creating amazing content that you can repurpose or whatever? Are they a sort of sales and traffic driver, or are they brand awareness and generating those like impressions or EMV or whatever you want them to generate? But saying that, I think from an impact point of view, where nano and micro is great is just that closeness they have to their audience. Because obviously with macro, there's amazing macro talent who do, they're in their DMs all the time, but just from their point of view, it must be like always on. If they're getting thousands of DMs every day, like they can't reply. Whereas someone like with less following, like a nano micro level, they are more replying to DMs. So I think they'll have that engagement a little bit stronger, which is why I think you see more sort of traffic. Like there is some macro creators who drive like huge traffic, but I would say in general, it's better to have like a swell of the nano and micro.
Yeah, of course.
And it means so much to them as well. I think when like, a small trip, I'm such a pro low budget person. I don't think we need these huge budgets for events. And when they get invited, I think it just like they'll do so much more in return, because they're like really, really appreciative.
I just want to kind of like think about everything that we've talked about. And like, obviously we've talked about affiliates a lot, and something that like I have a lot of friends in this space, in the influencer space. And one concern that they always had was like, when I get to a certain level, brands are going to not want to work with me on a paid side of things because I'm too big. Yeah. And obviously we've just talked about like nano and micro influencers or being at that level. They're so key and we know they are. Yeah. Like what, I suppose what I'm trying to get to is like, what does a typical kind of like affiliate look like? Is it the kind of affiliate, is it someone that's reached a certain level and is kind of like, I need a new revenue stream to my influencer work? Does that make sense?
I think, no, it does. So in terms of like from the influencer's point of view, almost with affiliates, it can really vary on following size. So I wouldn't say it's like they hit a level and they're not impactful. Like there's some people with huge followers like macro who have like an amazing sort of affiliate data behind them on the platform. But I think the more shocking ones is like the 40,000 person or like the 10,000 person, and you're like looking at her link clicks and her sales, and that's a huge impact. But I think from an influence point of view, it's more about, I say, like you're building that relationship with their audience. Maybe if they think that's why brands don't want to work with them, or if brands are looking for more traffic, maybe doing more like Instagram stories with links, because the more data you can build for yourself, I think then you can show that to brands. And if that conversation is changing from like impressions EMV to traffic, then they're starting to build like their own traffic data themselves.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Lowri, what is one trend in the beauty kind of like influencer culture that excites you right now?
Oh, so boring, but affiliate. Sorry. Honestly,
she's not like, influencer queen, she's affiliate queen.
I think I've always worked in startup, always worked close to the founder. I really love seeing an impact, and it's just so exciting when you do see someone and they are like, you see a huge uplift in the sales and stuff, and everyone gets excited. And I really, really enjoy that side. And I think it's going to really go there, I would say.
And is there anything that concerns you about the space?
I would say it's probably a funny answer, but budgets, just because I feel that we can't keep up with this like these like huge events like that some do, or like these overnight trips, and obviously it's like amazing, but I think that's what concerns me a little bit, is just there are so many like influencers out there, and I think budget could be better spent elsewhere.
And I think when you see influencers on certain kind of like level of trips, like even my friends, I just like have to scroll past it.
I think it's going that way a little bit. I think, and it's really hard. Like me and my friends, we've got a bit of a sort of pool of like influencer marketers, and we're like, God, have you just seen this one? Like, can we top that? No, like that's huge budget. And then it makes it really hard. So I'm a very pro. I think it's more about the connection, the relationship building. Like I think we've done so many for very small costs, where I think it's just like around a table having lunch at a nice time. It doesn't have to be this like over the top thing.
It doesn't have to be something that you like. Let's take, for instance, like these things that may have cost them a lot of money to get their like influencers there or their creators. Doesn't necessarily have to be like this full-blown like campaign that we need to see as a consumer, because surely that is more about connecting with them, getting them to understand you as a brand and the brand understanding them as a creator, rather than it for us, for consumer consumption.
Yeah.
Like, because that is not going to turn me on at all.
100%.
So you're right. Like just those lunches, those dinners, like intimate, just having those conversations that doesn't necessarily need to be for.
Yeah. So I think at the end of the day, like what you want, like what the goal is, you want them to love the product. Like that is like, they can do a story of their unboxing the mailer. That might tick a box from an EMV point of view. So I'm like, great, yeah, they covered it. But like for me, I'd rather see them being like, guys, you need to try this blush. Guys, you need to try this collagen. Like, I've seen an impact. That is what, because I'm a beauty consumer as well, that's what I want to see. I don't want to necessarily see like one story where it's got 10 unboxings in, because if you're just going to go past it, I think it's about really landing that like content that lands with the consumer.
And I have to ask, what do you think most brands get wrong when it comes to brand advocacy?
Maybe trying to do too much. I think trying to do it all, I think it's like slowly building the database. Obviously, I know I said at the beginning that we grew the database, and I think that's important. But sometimes you can send out way too many samples. I think you don't have to be sending out thousands of samples for every product drop. It's more about, I'd rather send 300, 400, whatever, 200 even, to a group of people who love the brand and are excited by it than just sending for the sake of it. Especially where, I've always for my budget, I'm always cogs and postage is everything. So I think that's something I would say.
Yeah, great. I'm actually wearing VIEVE mascara and blusher today.
Stunning.
Oh, and the
Skin Nova.
Oh,
you love
my
that one.
God,
it's so
that is
good.
so good.
It's so good. No, the products are great.
Yeah. Anyway, Lowri, this has been great. Thank you so much. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch?
So I'm on LinkedIn, it's Lowri Evans. I don't even know if that is my thing. And I kind of post a lot of work on Instagram. I'm Low Evans on Instagram if you want to follow me there.
We'll put it all in the show notes.
Yay, thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
That was another episode of Building Brand Advocacy, the world's top brand building podcast. To find out more about building brand advocacy and how this podcast is part of a bigger plan for our brand building cookbook, then make sure to search for Building Brand Advocacy in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or anywhere else that podcasts are found, and make sure that you click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. Thanks to Duel for sponsoring. To find out more, go to www.duel.tech, that's duel.tech. And on behalf of the team here at Building Brand Advocacy, thanks for listening.